Mark Harrison, you consult with some of the largest banks in the world in terms of their cybersecurity. So what should a small business owner know in terms of protecting themselves against hackers?
For a small business, I'd like to summarize it down to people, patches, and passwords. People, make sure you educate them in cybersecurity. Most importantly, phishing is a big problem at the moment, so make sure they understand what that is and how they can protect themselves from it. Patching, make sure all of the software and hardware you have is up to date. The vendors are releasing patches to stop you from being vulnerable. Make sure you install them. Passwords, make sure your employees are using different complex passwords for all of the different applications they use. To make this easier, use a password manager so they can have it in one place and only have to remember one password.
And those hackers really want small business owners and that data. So how can small business owners protect that data?
I would say the best way to protect the data is to use disk encryption. So disk encryption will mean that if somebody comes in and they take an actual laptop or a desktop or a server, then they can't access the data. Disk encryption stops that being a problem.
If the hackers do get in, what's the first response?
The first response is to have an instant response. So you need to know exactly what you're going to do. Typically, I would say use a instant response company. That may not be ideal for a small company because that would cost you a fair bit of money, but you need to have a backup. Backups are very important so that when it happens, you shut down what you've got at the moment, you take an image of that so that you can be used for forensics in the future, and then you load up the new one.
On the topic of money, small business owners don't have a lot of it. So choosing where they're going to put their money and spend it wisely it's a big thing in terms of where should you allocate your resources. So how should they choose a cybersecurity vendor?
I would suggest you look at their history. Look at the history of a company, look and see what they found. A good cybersecurity vendor will release lots of free information, lots of white papers, lots of research that they've done that is public information. If a company's doing that kind of free work, they're probably in the right space. They're probably the kind of company you want to work with.
And how can they make sure that they're safe but not slow down their sales? I mean, if you have a 4 or 5, 6 factor way to enter something into the system, it really slows down the process. So how do you make sure that all the security that you're adding in is just not a drag?
So it's all about risk assessment. If you've got something that's of high risk to the business and you lose it and it's going to cause you major issues, you need to make it secure as possible. So if it means three-factor authentication, fine. That being said, if you've got something that's less risky and you can rate your own risks, and you say, well, actually, if that gets compromised, it's not too much of a problem for us. So I'm just going to have single-factor authentication or two-factor.
And finally, what are the limits of technology? Right now it seems as though technology can solve anything, and then the hackers are also using technology to cause innumerable problems. So what are the limits? The biggest limit to me is people reusing code. So the programmers at the moment are reusing insecure code. So you're getting new products coming to the market and they've got the same problems that products 10 years ago had. So we need to change that before we can move forward. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.